Without flinching, blinking, or even a sign of hesitancy, she stared me down and stated it. "You're not invited to your father's birthday party." In the entryway of my parents' house, I remained still, clutching a bottle of red wine and a folder with the itinerary for my 2-year-long vacation. My stepmother Linda ended my hope for a united family in that way. I received no prior notice, no justification, a thin pointed line that may cut through bone. A blink from me, at most once, twice. Perhaps she was kidding, I thought. Perhaps this was her clumsy effort at being sarcastic. However, a smile eventually spread across her face in response. That well-manicured grin she saved for when she wanted to cut people off without yelling. With a composed air, she said, "Blake and I already agreed." She then calmly gestured towards the living room, where my brother sat expressionless and with his eyes lowered like a punished child. I was unable to breathe. My voice froze. I was immobile. It felt as if someone had pried something out of my chest from within. 2 years of preparation, saved 58 grand via foregoing vacations, taking up side consulting work and eating dinners alone. It was all for the purpose of providing my dad Richard Hayes with the one present he had ever wanted for himself. A journey to the Berkshires. His birthplace was a farm, the ground that his grandpa tilled. I wished he would return to the same slopes, grasp the ancient trees, take in the remnants of the house he abandoned when he was 16 years old. And today, even my own family claims, not even welcomed, judgment had been rendered. In my absence, I ought to have anticipated it. There were no missing indicators, no calls returned, not read messages. As I attempted to finalize arrangements, unexpected difficulties with my timetable arose. That unsettling silence whenever I mentioned the vacation. But betrayal from those you thought loved you the most is the last thing you anticipate. That's me, Jessica Hayes. My age is 29. I have always been the daughter of my father. Whether I was in Portland, Chicago, or Austin, my father was always there for me. I am unwavering, no matter what my call is on Sunday. He has his flaws, and yet he excelled. He instructed me on changing a flat tire, checking the oil, and recognizing a lie, albeit I failed to apply the final skill when it pertained to my own family. I always felt a certain way as a kid growing up in Chapel Hill, left behind, feeling like I was the missing link in the jigsaw. My dad remarried Linda after my mom passed away. Blake, for whatever reason, became the favored offspring suddenly. Linda guaranteed it. Never once was she openly harsh. There will be no yelling out or slamming doors. The constant, gradual weariness of exclusion, disregard, and oblivion. The sort of treatment that makes you feel uncomfortable just being there. Regardless, I maintained contact with my dad. No matter the occasion, a birthday, a holiday, or an emergency, I was always there. I wanted to surprise him with something meaningful for his 60th birthday. This is not a gift certification. Another tie, no way. However, the basis. For months, I combed through county documents in search of the property line that had bordered his boyhood house. A woman who knew his uncle had a bed and breakfast in Lenox, so I contacted all of them. With the help of my cousins who lived nearby, I set up get-togethers with long-lost relatives. I thought it was important for him to know his origins. He was significant too. However, I am now being told that I am no longer welcome, while standing in the very foyer where I first learned how to fasten my shoes. The celebration in question. The preparations, though, including the plot. Taking a step back, Linda replied, her arms crossed over her clean blouse, as if she were firing an employee. Daddy wasn't anywhere to be found. as if waiting for him to materialize and explain that everything had been an error. I cast my eyes towards the corridor. He was absent, though. Alternately, perhaps, could have been completely unaware of their actions. Blake was the object of my silent pleading as I gazed at him, claiming this was incorrect. He was disagreeing. Not at all. He continued to drink his Coke as he looked away from me. It was then that I realized it. This was not a mistake. It was a triumph. "You've turned this into a personal attack, Jess," Linda said, her voice becoming hypocritical and distant. "This journey, it goes against your father's wishes. Cross-country foolishness isn't for him anymore. Has it reached its end? On alternate weekends, the man goes hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains. To get to school, he rides his bike. As a professor of mechanical engineering, he teaches full-time. However, it was irrelevant. They settled on a backyard BBQ with catered sliders and store-bought cupcakes as the perfect, less complicated option for him. "Allow me to speak with him," I whispered. Lena furrowed her brow. "His schedule is really full. Golf league." By her lies, I could tell. It was my dad's policy to always have his phone on him. Certainly not with last year's cardiac scare. Like it was a lifeline, he never let it dangle from his belt. Regardless, I retrieved my phone, and dialed his number. There is no response. Without making any stops. This made me feel sick to my stomach. I was totally cut off from them. As I stood in the foyer of the home where I was born and reared, a devastating realization hit me. I was more than simply kicked out of a party. Even my own relatives had abandoned me. One item, nevertheless, was underappreciated. I still had a ways to go. Not even close. I was the first one my dad would ever be pleased to confess to bringing a public weep to his cheeks, he claimed. During my college graduation, it occurred. Glancing down at his best blue suit, he stood in the front row. His eyes glazed as I made my way across the stage. Jessica Lynn Hayes, summa cum laude, was read out by the announcer, and he applauded so forcefully that he hurt his palms. No clapping from Linda, though. I don't think so. She cracked a smile for the camera. With a deft touch, she struck a stance. But as the evening progressed, she whispered, "You know Blake got into Yale Law with honors too." We were all sitting at a restaurant table enjoying champagne and laughing. That has always been the case. Blake has to shade over every victory I achieved. Whatever I tried, he had previously done something flashier, noisier, and more remarkable. He was the pride and favorite of the family. A successor. Where am I then? I was the girl whose timing was both fortuitous and unfortunate. Dad had a brief breakdown when our mum passed away when I was 7 years old. Then Linda showed up, finished with polish, at ease. I am perpetually one step ahead of my fellow roommates. Law and order were restored by her. Structure, along with Blake. For a long time, I believed she rescued our family. My question now is if she merely rearranges things to fit her vision. When I was a kid, we always had a put-on for the holidays. Coordinated ensembles, personalized tablecloths. Natural smile photo sessions would require 10 takes. Every single one of those photos showed Linda encircling Blake's shoulder as if the two were meant to be. Dad captured mid-blink off to the side. Who am I on? Sometimes they are completely obscured. However, my dad and I managed to create our own rhythm despite the imbalance. Using Post-it notes, he prepared my meals. Walked me to school long after I was old enough to go alone. He liked the way my brain worked and stayed up late to help me rework my college essays. Something changed inside of me when he turned 59. Perhaps it was the little shiver he made when I inquired about the progress of retirement plans. Perhaps it was the feeling of seeing him slow down after all these years. Alternatively, it may have been the realization that time stops. Absolutely not even for our loved ones. Therefore, I vowed to give him an irreplaceable present. There was more to my plans than that. Memories were being made by me, his birthplace in the Massachusetts hills. Lennox are a 10-day trek away. Stunning views of the Berkshires from this privately owned, meticulously maintained farmhouse dating back to the 19th century. A visit to the regional archives to learn more about our ancestry. And I've had actual face-to-face reunions with long-lost cousins I tracked down through genealogy forums and old letters. They were not located for months. I had a conversation with Judith Ryder, a woman who still resides on the property my dad's grandpa farmed. She verified, "That's your father's uncle," and emailed me a fading black and white photo of a young child with a toothy smile. The fate of the remaining family members was a constant mystery to us. This picture made me think of my dad, located on the plot of property. He came to the realization that his history was still there, patiently waiting for him. Over Thanksgiving dinner, I proposed the idea, and everyone appeared to be on board with it. No problem at all. While Blake was eating his turkey, he gave me the thumbs up. His wife Sophie made a remark about how adorable the Berkshires are in the autumn, and Linda even wanted to know which airline I was considering. How about Dad? He seemed really delighted. "Would you really help me out like that?" "Is that so?" he inquired. Nodding, I consented. With tears in his eyes, he glanced down for an instant before looking back up. "The things I say in passing always seem to stick with you," he remarked. "Even the ones I speak aloud, but then forget." I got up at 2 a.m. that night, making files, itineraries, spending plans, and contact information. Sticky notes and printer paper turned my flat into a makeshift battle room. Massachusetts town ledgers were exchanged for Italian phrase books. In the process of organizing the sites we would see, I became familiar with the distinction between colonial revival and Greek revival styles of architecture. Something about it seemed absolutely correct. Then it stopped. Little changes began to add up. Instead of reserving activities for the garden club, Linda repeatedly forgot about our trip meetings. When I emailed Blake about possible dates and ticket alternatives, he suddenly stopped replying. Reminders to take his blood pressure pills, or not overdo it at his age, would halt Dad mid-sentence if he asked enthusiastically about vineyard excursions. Additionally, the owner informed me that someone had previously emailed them to hold the reservation under review, using my father's name when I phoned to confirm the rental one night. That power was never hers. To make things sound more official, though, Linda had always excelled at that. She shrugged when I challenged her. "Don't you feel like this is a little excessive?" she inquired, he said, for the guy who gets tired cutting the grass. So that was from the beginning, constantly dwindling, never subtle deception. I persisted, though. Why? Because whenever I sensed resistance, each time the pause was noticeably longer than necessary. My dad would text me, "Got my walking shoes ready." "Did you know Edith Wharton's estate is a museum now? Can we stop by the general store where I bought my first baseball glove?" We breathed in those messages. Just thinking about them brought me back to the original purpose of my act. This is not for review, with no intention of praising someone. Aside from him, regarding the man who vividly recalled my piano recitals from middle school. This is for the guy who didn't get up till 4 a.m, helping me construct a model of the solar system on the day when I failed to remember the science fair was to be held. In honor of the man who loved silently but deeply, this was well deserved. irrespective of the opinions of others. There were no slamming doors or sirens associated with the sabotage. Word spread like wildfire, time lags, avoided making eye contact, and there was complete quiet, which seemed to grow louder by the week. For a while there, I just assumed everyone was too busy. Court cases were Blake's. Poor Sophie had PTA. Every time I phoned Linda, brought up her garden club, and her newfound yoga fixation, as if downward dog might supplant direct conversation. But then I saw a change that I couldn't turn a blind eye to. Nobody bothered to read the emails regarding the trip. A single word was returned for texts pertaining to passports or packing lists. Whenever I mentioned the schedule on our Sunday conversations, the subject would always go off into something else like Blake's promotion, Linda's golf swing, or new recipes. And the worst thing, even my dad didn't notice. Linda's response to his inquiry on the farm rental, "We'll see, honey," would make him giggle. Just now, Jessica is considering her alternatives. The idea that I hadn't previously spent thousands to get it is completely ignored. After work one night, I made the 3-hour drive from Portland to have dinner with them. The private chef at the farmhouse had offered to make dishes from Dad's boyhood, so I took along printed maps, confirmations of my reservations, and even a menu sample from him. A mischievous Linda greeted me at the door while wearing pearls. She said the word "oh" in response. Your arrival slipped my mind entirely. Several women from my book club were invited. Would you want to have a conversation after dessert? We didn't, she said. In my car that night, I sobbed. It wasn't that no one listened to me. Reason being, I was erasing myself at a moderate pace. In a strategic sense, still I held on to the belief that things would get better. My dad wanted this vacation, I told myself. He was determined to hold on to it no matter what. On Sunday, I happened to overhear a discussion taking place in the kitchen. That was the type of experience from which you can never recover. In order to accept a client's call, I had gone into the corridor. I came crashing back, stopping short of the kitchen door. Linda spoke in a raspy, low voice. On his birthday, she has grabbed center stage, as if it were her responsibility to decide everything. There was a delay before Blake responded. That's just the way it is. In their own little universe, Jess and Dad are. As if the majority of us are irrelevant, a gasp escaped my lips. Something she's trying to prove, Linda remarked, that she holds greater significance than the remainder of us. However, he should get some sleep. No traveling circus here. Then Blake let out a chuckle. In fact, he chuckled. My heart shattered. Sitting on the chilly tile floor with my hands covering my lips, I retreated into the guest bathroom after backing out of the corridor. I shut the door behind me. It went beyond mere indifference. It wasn't a neglect of duty. Doing so was intentional. In slow motion, they were excluding me from my own father's life. After dinner, I contacted my dad, asking whether it was okay to call him tomorrow. Need to double-check anything before the trip. He responded quickly, most eager. Would you mind rehashing the details of that culinary class? Hope was reignited in an instant. He had no idea. Not at all. Praying French expressions like cranberry chutney would never have happened if he wasn't interested in this. The pressure, however, persisted. After that, Linda started sending alternative birthday suggestions. An outdoor cookout at the lakeside residence. The country club is hosting a cocktail party. With the caption, low-key and classy, she even sent me an email with a picture of a sheet cake decorated with golf motifs. She called when I failed to respond. Jessica, she moaned as if I were her little daughter. This concept clearly needs a lot of work from you. The nicest presents, meanwhile, aren't always the ones we have to go across the country to get. Is that your impression of it? I inquired. Am I after something specific? I believe, she stated with a little hint of tenderness, that it's all right to acknowledge when something is excessive. For whom is it excessive? I mean, who would have thought my dad would be the one to take pictures of Berkshire landmarks and then send me links to historical places with the subject line, "This one too." Unbelievable. Not me, thanks very much. I put up money for 2 years, changed my work schedule, and passed up 3 vacations, all in order to pay for this one. Still, it seemed like everyone was trying to subtly get me to doubt myself in every interaction. Modifications tinged with gaslight started with rephrasing. You're exerting unexcessive force. He's merely attempting to communicate courteously. You are aware of his strong aversion to causing others discomfort. Could it be? They could have been correct. Had I forgotten to inquire as to his desire for it in my haste to provide him with something unique? For about 12 hours, the idea lingered in my mind, until my dad left a message and unexpectedly phoned me. "Hi there, I was just doing some research on Hancock Shaker Village. Original structures dating back to the 1800s are still standing right. Why don't we include it in the rote?" 5 times I replayed the message. No, not only out of politeness, anxiety filled him, very enthusiastic. Something told me that someone, maybe even a close friend or family member, was attempting to convince me differently. The tension kept rising. More frank words began to seep out of Linda's mouth. "This won't satisfy your dad in the slightest. He's worn out before the journey has even begun. This doesn't need to be this difficult. Where does Blake stand?" He had become so contemptuous that he no longer concealed it. "Jess, I'm confident we can cover the loss if you're worried about the deposits. You don't need to worry about breaking the bank." Something clicked for me in that line. It made all my hard work seem like a waste of money. That was the end of my drive. I am free. I adore you. Message, you're creating a lot of noise. We should fix it. But I preferred not to have their fix. Please tell me the truth. Therefore, I apologize for not saying this weeks ago. Do you even know what he wants? Are you really thinking he's too old to enjoy life to the fullest? No one responded. Felt no need to. I had come to a sad but clear realization by that point. His birth date wasn't the only thing they were changing. Out of it, they were rewriting me. In the afternoon on Saturday, seasonal transition. The type of day when the sun suggests warmth, but the breeze keeps you on the edge of your seat. Flaky lemon danishes from Dad's favorite bakery were in the passenger seat as I drove past my boyhood street. Sacrifice for the sake of peace, an emblem, perhaps a gentle nudge towards the significance of this journey. First thing I saw when I stepped into the block were the automobiles, a surplus, cars parked side by side on either side of the road. As I went by Aunt Lydia's vehicle, my chest constricted. Uncle Matt's rusty Dodge came next. With his distinctive license plate, even Martin, our cousin from Michigan, was present. Everyone remained silent. I parked around the corner, paced slowly. It seemed as if I were entering a sacred or eerie place. I couldn't tell which. I could see them from inside the house via the windows in the living room. Laughter is being heard. Having conversations with ornaments in tow. Golden balloons were being inflated by someone. Hardly did I swallow. My palms began to perspire immediately. I nearly reversed my course. Nearly there. However, a part of me was adamant. The doorbell rang. My cousin Ashley smiled in response. "It was a surprise to me that you were coming, Jessica." Whispering a response, I slipped by her and inside the house that once seemed like home. "Seems like no one else did either," I said. Vanilla candles and the aroma of catered appetizers wafted over the air. Extending across the wall of the living area, the banner was enormous. To Richard, I hope you have a very happy 60th birthday. The name of my dad. The printed picture centerpieces include my father's cheerful visage. This is my family. In my absence, everyone I turned around was smiling and making preparations for the celebration. Whether it was relatives, long-lost acquaintances, or even the Haydens from the street over. A printed seating chart was being reviewed by someone. Upward glances were absent from all faces. Then again, maybe they did, and then averted their eyes. With a tray of little coffee cups in her hands, Linda came trudging out of the kitchen. When she laid eyes on me, she froze. She carefully set the platter down afterwards. Her name was Jessica. Flat, cold. The funeral was in the wrong place, and I was there. I don't understand. My voice was strained as I asked. I don't understand. An exhalation escaped her lips, pleasantly amused. I should not be shocked. Amazed, really. On this day, we will celebrate your father's birthday. Of course, apart from me. According to her, that was the decision, as if we were debating a company letter. Our group caught the attention of a few neighboring relatives. They were immediately captivated by their phones. With a gesture towards the kitchen, she added, I need to talk to you. After that, I did as instructed. In my wake, the din of party preparations died down. Menus, platters, and cake samples filled the kitchen, which resembled a battle room on the inside. Countless RSVP sheets, stacks of invitation cards, every detail carefully planned. Detailed preparations made. Everyone is included. Except me. Why was I not informed? I inquired. Dessert dishes were constantly being rearranged by Linda. Casually, she continued, We didn't think you'd be interested, she said. Provided that you have other plans. My other options. My voice began to waver. Are you referring to the vacation dreams that Dad has had? This one, I've been planning it for the past 2 years. He knows it's not going to happen, she remarked. Going on a journey at his age, I can't handle the jet lag, the lengthy hikes, or the hefty bags. Did he mention that to you? I inquired. No sound. Her gaze elevated, her words became more incisive. Jessica, you seem to have an inflated sense of self-importance. With your majestic motions, you are always swooping in, seeking to establish your status as the favorite. Being the favorite isn't the point here, I responded, my voice growing increasingly heated. It's about making Dad's day special in some way. Anything that makes him happy. An ancestral treasure search is unnecessary, she admonished. Stability is what he needs. Level of recognition. Others that are concerned for him. I am concerned about him. I yelled out. An eerie stillness. As a subsequent sound, the pause of forks. The din is fading. My voice became lower. Can someone tell me where he is? I inquired. I need to know where Dad is. Linda paused. Go away, carrying out errands. I took out my phone and gave it a ring. There is no response. After that, though, it was audible to me. That alarm tone. From within the home, I presume. Pursuing the echo, I made my way down the corridor. Closed was the door leading to the study. Sudden and unexpected, Linda stepped in front of me to obstruct my path. She spoke the words, he forgot his phone too quickly. It was that. I knew at that same second, with icy, agonizing certainty, she had lied to us. In the past, she had lied. This time, she lied. With my heart pounding, I redirected my attention to the kitchen. I'm staying, I whispered. Not unless I have a conversation with him, she said. Upon my return to the island, I sat down the box of danishes resting unopened beside me. The place seemed to tremble with tension as I did so. A quarter of an hour elapsed. Next, Blake entered the room. I caught him off guard. It was clear as day. He forced a smile and said, "Jess, I was unaware you were on your way." Curiously, I stood there. What I meant was that I had no idea. Like you had no idea I was going to be left out of his birthday celebration. Quietly, he remarked, "It's not personal," and he settled into a chair. All we did was assume it would be simpler, fewer arguments. By wiping my memory clean, he rubbed his temples and let out a breath. "No matter what, you always appear to be the center of attention, as if no one else comprehends him but you." "I never said that," I said categorically. "However, I have been paying attention, so I understand what he wants." Looking at me, Blake turned to Blake. "Afterwards, please go. Our goal is to provide him with the best possible care." I drew nearer. "No, doing what's most convenient for you is your goal." In the doorway, Linda materialized. A stern, "That's enough," came out of her. "There's nothing you can do except wreck it." I felt a sudden jolt of anger. Ignored for a long time, questioned again, passed on. Up I got. "Please tell me the truth. Why was I singled out?" "Well, apart from caring too much, what did I do wrong?" A hush fell over the room. Everyone others froze. The graceful cups came to a sudden stop in the air. Nobody spoke up. Linda's expression sharpened, and then it fell. The mask fell off. "Are you seeking honesty?" Her voice was hardly audible as she spoke. There was unanimous agreement. "You are not invited to your father's birthday celebration." The words cut me to the core. Someone somewhere let out a gasp. However, the expression on her face was much more devastating than her remarks. Full contentment, as if after all her hard work, she had finally achieved her goal. Where am I then? Victimized. I was only a byproduct. I refrained from shedding a tear. My tone was calm. I merely surveyed the silent room and then made my way to the exit. Nobody attempted to intervene with me. That stillness, though, it provided me with all the necessary information. The alarm went off at 3:17 in the morning. A name I hadn't seen in days. Blake lit on the screen. My pulse was racing as I gazed at it, in the pitch black, as if it had some knowledge I lacked. Voicemail was the destination. A message arrived seconds later, a second buzz. With trembling palms, I pressed play after unlocking the screen. Even before he spoke my name, his voice began to break. "This is me, Jess. We must have a conversation. I was wrong. Oh my, we were all so careless." No sound. Then Mom lied, to all of us, to Dad. She informed him that you were not interested in attending the celebration, that you declined to take part in it. He assumed you simply disappeared. I was taken aback. Blake's voice became softer and nearly cracked. "He's just crushed. The journey was completely unknown to Jess." My hands went numb. Perhaps I simply lacked the motivation to. Unaware of my blanket's presence, I sat up in bed, eyes wide open. My dad had no idea. The whole while, who knew I had left him high and dry? The voicemail was repeated 3 times. Prior to my brain catching up, my fingers began to move. Bypassing Blake's number was my task. Recalled his call. The first ring was the one he picked up. As for Jess, with caution he inquired, "I beg you stay on the queue." "Write it down." My voice had grown raspy, cold. Then he did it, with excruciating, collapsing specificity. Emails had been intercepted by Linda, text messages that were deleted. I pretended I was too overwhelmed with work to participate in any planning and informed everyone that I had disappeared. She informed Dad that I had declined to take part in the festivities. She informed my relatives that I had planned an exclusive vacation for myself without consulting anyone. In my attempt to buy Dad's attention, I said, "Even worse, though, she had their trust." Blake's voice quivered once again. I hoped she was good at her heart. I wondered whether you were being overbearing. You ignored my text messages. My questioning was lacking. She deceived us, my friend. He hesitated, and Dad is aware now. My breathing became shallow. How I murmured softly. A sigh escaped Blake's lips. On her nightstand, he discovered one of your brochures. As it relates to the culinary course, your signature was clearly visible on it. On day 6, we'll have pasta with Maria. My dad is going to like it. It was that note. Writing it came to mind. With a smile on my face as I doodled it, it seemed as if a lifeline had been found at last. Blake kept going. He came to her and inquired. Once again, she lied. I altered the plot twice throughout the course of a single discussion. He proceeded to verify the bank. I discovered that she had spent a significant amount of money from their joint account on the celebration. He saw the big picture, and he went completely insane, Blake whispered. He departed. He is residing at the lake home of his Uncle Henry. He is currently unwilling to meet with her. My hands quivered as I shut my eyes. I fooled myself into thinking I was shielding him from their deceit the whole time. As it happens, he was in need of their protection. What is our next move? I inquired. With a steady, almost delicate tone, Blake spoke. Let him see you. And when? Today is the day. Whenever possible. I gave him a little nod before I realized he was blind. Very well, I said. You should inform him that I will be present. What about Blake? You say, this isn't a panacea? He said, I know. But perhaps it's a beginning. Just after midday, I got in my car and headed for the lakeside retreat. My last visit was during my undergrad years. Summers were spent here with my dad, and I doing nothing except building fires, skipping stones, eating overdone hot dogs, and chatting aimlessly. That spot had always belonged to us. I spotted him as I made my way towards the pier via the trail through the woods, taking a seat on the porch, totally by myself. With a bent back, I didn't realize the shoulders were that little. Halfway down, he had his beloved blue wind cheater. He hid his face under a battered baseball cap. For a moment, he ignored me. On the other hand, perhaps he was stumped for words and did. Dad, I whispered to him. He pivoted, a crimson rim around his eyes. I am exhausted, but everything changed the moment he laid eyes on me. Elevated to his feet, he rose slightly. After that, he spread his arms wide. Immediately, I sprinted over to him. Plus, we remained still for quite some time, just a moment, allowing the breeze from the lake to convey any unspoken thoughts. I apologized deeply, I said. To give me a look, he drew back slightly. No, he firmly stated. I apologize. I ought to have been more aware. I ought to have inquired further. My daughter you are. You would never leave me. I should have known that. A knot formed in my throat, saying, I thought you didn't want the trip. I continued. I thought you opted for them. I thought you were the one who decided to leave, he confessed. After weeks of misunderstanding, silence, and suffering, everything between us suddenly fell apart. On the bench along the pier, we took our seats. I spilt the beans to him, the strategies, the mansion, a record of the family, the cook from the farmhouse who memorized his grandpa's stew recipe. He lowered his head and listened intently. Eyes gleaming, she glanced upwards. Was that all you did? What about me? Nodding, I consented. A slow exhalation escaped him. I could not have imagined a better present for myself. I produced the printed itinerary from my backpack and presented it to him. He treated it as if it were a priceless relic. We remained silent. Is it already too late? Is that so? He inquired. A blink from me. Oh really, how damn is. Nan? This journey. Should I go now or what? Through my tears, I managed to crack a smile. No, I responded. The time has not passed. The first strategy was not revived. Disappearance of the farmstead. The planes hadn't taken off. The schedule canceled. A dream though initially, I began this entire endeavor, for it had not yet died. Based on this, I devised an alternative strategy, one of lesser size. Be quiet, however, on a deeper level, my dad and I alone. This is a journey that a father and daughter are doing together in an effort to recover what Linda and years of pent-up animosity and miscommunication had stolen. Nestled along a peaceful hill road in Stockbridge, I discovered a renovated home with a wraparound porch and ancient creaky floors that seemed like they had been there forever. It wasn't flashy, but it felt like home. Plus, it was just 10 minutes away from the property that his grandpa had owned in the past. Dad gazed across the road at the field as we drew into the gravel driveway. "That barn," he murmured. "The last time I saw that was 50 years ago." For some time after that, he remained silent. Nothing more than that, putting his hands in his pockets. Mizzle haze. The inside walls carried the sense of cedar and old age. A flat-screen television was missing. In the absence of a hot tub, what you need is a little kitchen, a few cups that don't match, and a view that will soothe your bones. We began to put together the tale over the course of the following several days. At the county records office, we were assisted by Eleanor, a woman who had been employed there since the late 1970s. With her aid, we were able to get land deeds and handwritten census notes that dated back to 1893. Next to the word farmer, we discovered the signature of Samuel Hayes' dad's great-grandfather, written in looping ink. The day he purchased the initial 2 acres, he signed the document according to Eleanor. I am very proud of that. The paper seemed like it would break in Dad's hands as he peered at it. His grandmother used to sell baked goods along the ancient route behind the church where we walked later on. Even though it was now overgrown and a maze of pine needles and wildflowers, his feet still remembered it. There was a time when this path went directly to the brook, he whispered. Every time we picked blueberries, our fingers would become a deep purple. I went door to door with a green shuttered colonial home on day 4. I had stumbled upon the URL while perusing a random online discussion board. Unfamiliar with the situation, I tried not to inform my dad. A far wiser old lady spoke out, styled with a side ponytail, sharp azure pupils. "Judith Ryder, is that you?" I inquired. Yes, she did indeed nod. "Jessica Hayes is my name. It seems like we're related." She looked shocked, soothed thereafter. Stepping onto the porch, she arrived. "So you're dating Richard, huh?" Suddenly, we found ourselves indoors poring over old records, sharing a good chuckle at Ephraim and Luetta names, driving by an old worn-out photograph of 2 lads with slingshots in front of the identical barn that we had just drove by. "Judith mentioned that one of them was your grandpa. That other one is my dad. They ran in the family, as close as brothers." There was silence while Dad gazed at the picture. He only nodded as if a long-lost piece of puzzle had been reassembled. Judith informed us about a lady named Annalise, Dad's aunt. That evening, while we savored leftover blueberry cobbler and tea, sister of his father. A young woman departed from the town, according to Judith. Moved to Ohio after getting married. What became of her, though, was a mystery to us. Pops shot up an eyebrow. Who said that Annalise didn't have a daughter? At that, Judith gave a subtle nod. A woman named Margaret spoke. Quickly, I reached for my laptop. That user's name was in an earlier thread on the forum. Margaret Linton is a woman who many years ago wrote an article on her quest to find her mother's birthplace in Massachusetts. Afterwards, I sent her an email. not expecting a reply. Still, it was present the following morning. My suspicion is that you have located me. A quaint little village close to the Vermont border was our destination 2 days later as we drove east. With a timid grin and eyes that seemed very familiar, Margaret welcomed us. She spoke of the fact that she had known all along that they were visiting relatives. However, I never received a response to my inquiries. Father embraced her as if they had been friends for ages. It seems she knew things we didn't. Written communication, photos. Not to include a recipe card with Annalise's handwriting on it, lemon shortbread cookies. Much like the ones Dad recalled from his childhood. Reclaiming our vacation seemed like it was missing something. This was about us taking back our people, the past of our nation. As the sun dipped below the horizon the following evening, my dad and I returned to the cottage and sat on the porch to watch the sun set over the hills. Little by little, he drank his tea. Then he gave me the expression of calm stability that had been missing. I had no idea any of this would happen, he remarked. I was also unaware of that, I said. But in my opinion, this is the better option. With a gentle laugh, he grinned. I am uncertain about our plans for my 61st birthday, he confessed. But it will undoubtedly be an event to remember. It had been weeks since we had both laughed so hard. Something clicked for me at that very second. This was more than a vacation. It was a rebirth within a household. Regarding a connection on the subject of an unburied truth, we set out on our adventure with the intention of recovering lost memories. What we discovered, though, was a future that required safeguarding. Everything didn't click until we returned home. This was the last leg of the journey. The images were put into print. The luggage was unloaded. However, the lack of communication between certain relatives, that portion remained with me. Linda chose not to do so, wasn't texting. No one asked how it turned out. I didn't anticipate that she would, though. A few weeks down the road, Dad settled into a condo across town. Claimed the historic home had a hollow vibe, as if its inhabitants had abandoned its once comfortable furnishings. On Sundays, Blake began dropping by his apartment. From time to time, it's just to drop off food. At other times, it's best to just sit quietly. The concept of forgiveness wasn't immediately brought to my mind again. That was too much for me to handle. In my opinion, finding serenity isn't necessarily the first step towards healing. Occasionally, it's about allowing the reality to sink in for a while. But the thing that took me off guard the most, what really shocked me, was ensued as a result. Margaret, his long-lost cousin, was invited to Thanksgiving by Dad. Along with her kid, she brought homemade cranberry sauce in a cracked blue dish that bore a striking resemblance to the one my mom once had. They chuckled as if they had always been a part of our story, as if they weren't total strangers who had returned from the outside. Perhaps that is the objective. A family doesn't always consist of blood relatives or roommates. Whoever shows up at 3 in the morning isn't always family. To admit I was mistaken. A cousin who responds to an impersonal email with genuine warmth is this person. It's the dad who, after realizing he didn't probe enough, listens attentively until you speak. This is the you that quits feeling guilty about being too sentimental. It seems like a lot of us live our lives anticipating that other people would pick us, visit us, take us captive. We must demonstrate our significance. Sometimes, though, we are not chosen. From time to time, we are disregarded, erased, or written off. And that's when we get to make a decision. Diminutive forms are within our reach. We are free to vanish. Another option is to construct a table at a different location. Please take a seat. please extend an invitation to anyone who might like to remain. And we must not forget that our worthiness was not diminished simply because we were not chosen. In hindsight, the journey was not a mistake. I choose not to dwell on the pain, the conflict, or the muddled middle, just because it allowed me to see my dad in a way that had been missing for a long time, vulnerable, honest, and fully there. As a result, we were once again linked to a heritage that had slipped our minds. It put me in touch with others who showed me that true family doesn't always conform to expectations. Furthermore, it enlightened me to a fundamental reality: who loves you wrong is something you can't control. The people you love are a personal decision, though. This is what I know at this point. Showing up, particularly when it's tough, is how family is made. During such discussions, when keeping quiet would be the simpler choice, when we contribute without expecting anything in return. It's hardwired, not hereditary, picked, not handed down. Even more importantly, I will never again take it for granted. Reason being, once you've struggled to get it back, when you've taken in your surroundings and determined that you actually do belong there, you cease to be a permission seeker. Forget about waiting for love to be perfect before giving it. Instead, you begin to live life as if love is a gift you may freely offer, that in some way suffices. Of course it was.